Divinare is a bluffing and deduction game designed by Brett J. Gilbert and published by Asmodee Editions.
So in Divinare, players are 19th century mediums trying to divine their opponent's cards in order to prove their power. It's playable by 2 to 4 players in about half an hour.
Each player begins Divinare with a character card and 4 prediction tokens. The 4 boards are placed in the center of the table, along with the scoring tokens and the cards. The starting player then gets an action card for the number of players in the game.
Divinare plays out in a number of rounds that's determined by the number of players. Each round, players will play cards from their hand and try to divine how many other cards will be played in order to score points. At the end of the game, the player with the most points is the winner.
At the start of each round, each player places one of their prediction tokens in the center space of each board. Then they're dealt 6 cards. 12 cards are dealt aside and kept out of that round.
On their turn, a player takes one of the cards from their hand and places it face up next to the board that matches its type. They then take their prediction token on that board and move it to a new space, even if they didn't want to move it. Now, the number that's listed on each of those spaces is a guess as to how many cards of that type will be played in the round.
So you can either move your token to an unoccupied numbered space on the board, or to the central space, which can hold any number of tokens. Only players with their tokens on numbered spaces will score for that round.
Now, the action card lists events that will happen over the course of a round. For example, in a 4-player game, when each player has 6 cards in their hand, they will draw 3 of those and pass them counterclockwise. Similar card exchanges are going to happen at 4 cards each and 2 cards each.
Once each player has played all of their cards, it's time for scoring. So for each board, the player that guessed correctly the number of cards that were going to be played gets a blue scoring token. That's worth 3 points. If you're one off either way, you get a yellow token. That's worth 1 point. Further than that, you get a red token, and that's worth -1.
Each board also has a few bonus spaces. A player with their token on a space with an empty red circle gets 1 extra token of the type they earned. If they're on a space with a filled red circle, they get 2 extra tokens. And this applies to those negative red tokens as well as to all of the positive ones. Now, if by some chance the number of cards played doesn't match the number on any of the spaces on the board, then nobody scores for it that round.
After scoring, the prediction tokens go back to the center spaces of each board, the cards are shuffled and redealt, and a new round begins with a new starting player.
One of the great things about Divinare is that its gameplay is really made by the interaction between players and the bluffing that comes from having to move your token every time you play a card. It adds some really interesting challenges and strategic depth to it, and plays out in a way I haven't seen in other bluffing games. The game also has a really nice balance between that kind of bluffing and a kind of push your luck mechanic where you're trying to maximize your score, but it gets a little bit dangerous if you think your guess is going to go wrong. One potential drawback is the game is so highly interactive and so dependent on bluffing and deception that it can be intimidating for players who aren't very good at bluffing or who don't like games that have that much direct conflict, because there really isn't anything to the game beyond that.
So another con for this game is it really isn't at its best with 2 players. You should really have 4 players to really get this game going and to really feel like, you get all that fun strategy. A pro, though, to this game is the art and the theme. It's really, really beautiful, very fitting. All of the cards and all of the tokens really play into that whole 19th century medium feel of it. It's really, really nice. It's also really small box, really easy to set up, really quick to learn, and therefore it's a really nice filler game. You can take it to conventions, travel around with it, and it's really, really easy to learn and really easy to play. I really like Divinare. I think it's a great game. I love that feeling of that bluffing mechanic and the way that you interact with the different players. It's very different. I've never seen that in a game before, and I like it.